So what's your advice to Republicans in Congress or Republicans running for Congress? What should they be doing here in Washington to improve the brand in order to take over the Senate?
Well, I think not only what they're doing now, but clearly going out as they're running next year for the Senate in particular, they need to be focused on what I still think are the two key issues nationally, just like they were in my state when I first ran. We still have, in large part, an economic, if not an outright crisis, some very serious economic concerns in our country. Not just for the economy as a whole, but because there are still too many people. Some are recovering in America, but there are still too many who are not coming through on that recovery. One of the great things I mentioned about President Reagan's acceptance speech that many people forget about the nomination in Detroit in 1980 was it was a very aspirational speech. It basically said, if you're living in poverty, we want to lift you out of that. If you're living in despair, we want to give you hope, but not necessarily hope based on the government. If we want everyone, we want to have a recovery, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. And I think that's got to be the message that Republicans need to do more to embrace across the board, but particularly in these Senate elections. And it also means that we cannot be, to that extent, we cannot be viewed as the party of no, which in the states where we're successful, that's exactly what's happening. We're not the party of no. We're optimistic. We're speaking in terms that are relevant. We're showing we have the courage to act on those convictions. At the national level, with the budget, with Obamacare, with other things, I think if we go to the American people, and I say we in the larger collective sense, if Republicans running for office go to voters in their districts, in their states, and across this country and say, here's our big, bold plans, here's our alternative that's market-driven, alternative that'll improve your life, that make your life better, that'll lower the cost of your small business. This is our alternative, Obamacare. If they go to the American public and say, here's what we think we need to do to stimulate the economy with a lower tax burden and freer trade option or whatever it might be, I think those are very, very compelling issues out there. And I think the feeling in America is that, at least I hear it from people talking about Washington, is not just focused on Republicans, but based on just about everybody here, is they think that people in Washington just fight for the sake of fighting. I think voters don't mind fighters as long as they think people are fighting for them. They're fighting for the hardworking taxpayer.
Is there anything you've noted that anyone in the Senate on the Republican side has put forward that would be emblematic of what you're talking about?
I mean, you hear bits and pieces of it. I'd like to see a more aggressive, and it doesn't have to be done right today, but even going into the next year, a more aggressive focus on a market-driven alternative to Obamacare, because I think, for a lot of Americans, they're frustrated not just with the website, they're increasingly frustrated with the program itself, and they're hungry to find out what an alternative would be.